Καλημέρα σας. Σας καλωσορίζω στο Delphi Classics, Classics in Praxis και θα ήθελα αμέσως να περάσουμε σε δύο συνομιλητές που τολμούν να δουν τα αρχαία ελληνικά όχι ως μια νεκρή γλώσσα, όπως ακούμε συχνά να λέγεται, μια γλώσσα του παρελθόντος, αλλά ως ένα ζωντανό τρόπο σκέψης, έκφρασης και παιδείας για το παρόν και το μέλλον. Η συζήτησή μας θα εστιάσει στις σύγχρονες βιωματικές μεθόδους διδασκαλίας και κυρίως στο πλεονέκτημα που έχει η Ελλάδα, καθώς τα αρχαία ελληνικά αποτελούν τη φυσική συνέχεια της ίδιας της γλώσσας μας, βοηθώντας έτσι περαιτέρω την ενίσχυση των αρχαίων ελληνικών στην παγκόσμια εκπαιδευτική σκηνή. Είμαι η Ευγενία Μανολίδου, είμαι υπεύθυνη προγράμματος σπουδών της Σχολής Αρχαίων Ελληνικών Ελληνική Αγωγή και στόχος μας είναι να αναδείξουμε το πώς μπορεί να μεταμορφωθεί η διδασκαλία του μαθητή όταν τα αρχαία ελληνικά διδάσκονται βιωματικά. Καλωσορίζω δύο ξεχωριστούς συνομιλητές, τον καθηγητή Jesús de la Villa, πρόεδρο της Διεθνούς Ομοσπονδίας Κλασικών Σπουδών, της γνωστής στους χώρους των κλασικών επιστημών ΦΙΕΚ, ο οποίος πρωτοστατεί στη διεθνή αναγέννηση των αρχαίων ελληνικών και των λατινικών, και τον καθηγητή κύριο Χρήστο Τσαγκάλη, έναν από τους σημαντικότερους μελετητές της ομηρικής ποιήσεως στην Ελλάδα, για να διερευνήσουμε μαζί το πώς τα αρχαία ελληνικά μπορούν να διδαχθούν βιωματικά, όχι μόνο ως ένα ακαδημαϊκό αντικείμενο μελέτης, αλλά ως τρόπος εμπλουτισμού της σύγχρονης παιδείας παγκοσμίως. Καλώς ήλθετε, κύριοι. To facilitate both speakers, the conversation will be conducted in English. So, gentlemen, welcome to this year's Delphi Classics, Classics in Praxis. Before we start our conversation, please introduce yourselves to the audience. Please, Professor.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation, and thank you very much for having the opportunity to be here in this huge and impressive forum. Well, I'm Jesús de la Villa, as our chair has said. I'm currently the president of the International Fédération of Associations of Classical Studies, and from this post, from this position, I have had the opportunity just to see how the ancient Greek, ancient Latin, and classical studies are in the world, and how developed, and which possibilities we have to enlarge, to disseminate even more this legacy. And well, we will have the occasion to speak about all these things just in a moment.
Of course. Thank you. Professor Tsagalis?
Thank you for this very kind invitation. I'm also thrilled to be here in Delphi in this very stimulating Delphi Economic Forum. I'm Professor of Ancient Greek Literature at the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki, member of the Academy of Letters and Sciences, the European Academy of Letters and Sciences, in the section of Classics and Oriental Studies, and member of the governing board of the Kέντρο Ελληνικής Γλώσσας in Thessaloniki.
The Center of the Greek Language in Thessaloniki. So, we have seen the last few years a turn in the study of the classics, especially in schools, due to the fact that many universities have a problem in their classical studies field. Less and less students want to study the classics or want to study humanitarian studies. One of the main problems is that they cannot learn ancient Greek or Latin. They cannot understand it. They have to study really hard, and then by the time they get to university, they have to study a text, and they don't really know what's happening. So, in Spain, as it is in Italy, the method in school is beginning to change. Can you tell us a few things about the method and what has happened these last few years?
Yes, of course. It's not only in Italy and in Spain, but yes, also in some of the countries that things are changing, are starting to change. But probably it's in these two countries where the thing is more impressive. In my own country, which is I know well, by now there are tens of teachers of ancient Greek in the secondary schools who teach actively the language as a way just to attract the students, to make the study of the language more attractive, more appealing, but also to impulse their knowledge. Because after this, by now we have had more than 15 years of this experience. I think that we can clearly say that the results are much better than with the traditional, so to say, system. Traditional, which is traditional, but only partially, because also the active method was already used many years ago in the 19th century, in the 20th, at the beginning of the 20th century, in many schools, in many countries, particularly in England and other places, already active methods were used.
Professor Tsagalis, can you describe what the active method is?
Yes. First, let me just remind everybody that we all have learned ancient Greek and Latin by means of the so-called passive method, which consists in basically rote memorization of grammatical forms and syntactical rules. And as we, as university professors, can certify, this method is not working. The active method, or dynamic method of learning ancient languages consists in the enhanced engagement and cultural relevance of the languages, which allows students to gain a deeper understanding of both ancient Greek and Latin. Keywords like immersion of the students into the ancient world, interactive activities are what I would call extremely useful tools for turning Greek and Latin into something fruitful and enjoyable, both for the teacher and for the students themselves.
Professor De La Villa, you mentioned before that there is this continuous change of the method in many countries in the world. You travel all over the world, being the president of the FIEC, and you see more and more institutions adopting this method. Can you tell us a few things about the history of the method? Because I'm always saying there are new methods, but this is actually not the new method at all. It is actually the method where the teaching of modern languages was based upon. We now learn English, French, Italian, Spanish, German, based on the method that 100 years ago, and even before that, students were learning ancient Greek and Latin. Isn't that amazing? And then we took out the communicative part because I think scholars in Germany decided that it's a very serious subject, the classics, ancient Greek and Latin. So they took out the communication, the oral characteristic of the language and the listening part, and then the language died. So this is where actually ancient Greek and Latin died. So we have to rejuvenate them. Can you please tell us a few things about how the method was before the 20th century, and then what happened?
Well, yes, it's more or less as you said. In principle, at least in those countries where Latin and Greek in the 19th century, when the national, the official, the public education was established, well, the active method somehow of just getting introduced into those languages, Latin and Greek, actively was the normal way to go into there. But of course, as you have said, Greek and Latin were thought of as very important things, and that mainly the texts were thought as something that should be studied almost scientifically, also at the secondary school, so in a more or less philological way. And that's why we, well, the whole system, based, of course, on the prestige of the German philology. And so how this system, based on the text and the study of the text and just the memorizing of many forms, just waiting for once when they can find, the students can find this word or this form, were taught. That's how it changed. And finally, following this prestige, we can say, first German schools, secondary schools, gymnasia, and afterwards of the rest of the world, this, well, what we could say traditional, but only newly traditional way spread out. And now we are changing this.
Now there is a global attempt to change the method all over the world, to go back to that traditional method of teaching, which was far more effective. Students would speak to one another in ancient Greek and Latin, they would engage in dialogues, they would act in theatrical plays, exactly as we learn English, French, Latin, Italian, and all the modern languages. So, Professor Tsagalis, you have told me in the past that at some point when you were studying ancient Greek, I don't know if you also studied Latin, but when you were studying ancient Greek, you were in groups that spoke ancient Greek to practice the language. Can you tell us a little bit about this experience?
Yeah. Well, it was an informal experience in the sense that it was not organized by an institute or university. It took place in Greece years ago when I was a student. There were a group of people from different European countries. Two of us were Greeks, some Germans, some Italians, some French. We met during the summer period once per day for 2 weeks, and there was a given topic. All of us had a certain level of knowledge of ancient Greek, so we discussed this topic, and this topic had to do with the political reality, with things that we all cared about. So that was a very stimulating experience because as you know, when you speak a language, the mental imprint is much stronger than when you read it. Reading is the less strong imprint created in the human mind. First is speaking, then is writing, because these are both active forms of learning, and then reading, which is a passive form of learning. So that was a very stimulating experience. But as you know very well, there are nowadays various institutions worldwide. We could mention the Vivarium Novum, the Collegium Latinitatis in Spain, the Pedeia Institute, and many others, where courses are held exclusively in ancient Greek and Latin. And I would encourage all of you to use the YouTube on the web. There are wonderful programs. You can see that happening with your own eyes and hear it with your own ears. It's a fascinating and stimulating experience. And if you have any doubts that this can be done, just do what I ask you to do.
I remember, thank you for mentioning the Vivarium Novum Academy. This is actually where I went in 2020, right before COVID started. And this is where I saw young students from Africa, from Japan, from China, from all over the world, speaking to me in ancient Greek. And it couldn't have been a more humiliating moment when young people from all over the world addressed me as being the Greek in ancient Greek, and I could not utter a word. And then when I left, I said, when I come back, I'm going to speak better than you. And then COVID struck, so I had to, I followed classes online, and then a year after I went back, and I followed many courses, but then in 6 months' time, I was already able to speak in ancient Greek, to understand in ancient Greek. And I did not have the time to study at all, but in 6 months, I started listening to the Gospels in church, and I could understand everything that the priest was saying, even little words that I could not understand before, even the tenses of the verbs, which I initially hated when I was a student. But this was because I could hear it from the other students, from the other teachers, doing it over and over again. So the Vivarium Novum is an incredible example. I don't mind saying that my ancient Greek teacher is from Mexico, and the assistant teacher is from Nepal. And they know ancient Greek so well. And my professor is 37 years old and his assistant is 18. And to realize, and he's from Nepal, it's amazing what is happening in those institutions. And there are similar ones in Spain and in England. You mentioned Oxford. In Oxford, it's 3 years now that they have courses exclusively presented in ancient Greek and Latin. And this is a formal academic institution. It's not just, groups or, informally speaking ancient Greek.
Which is a a healthy reaction to a problem created by the fact that more and more students were coming to university without any Greek and Latin. And of course, as was rightly said before, at the age of 18, the learning process is more difficult. You learn, it's not so easy to learn another language, especially languages like ancient Greek and Latin. So that is a very healthy response, and I think we can learn a lot from that.
Yes, of course.
But what I want to stress also is about a part of all these experiences and initiatives is that in some countries also this method is introduced in normal, informal education, so in the official education. This is the case, I told, of Spain, but also, for example, there are some other countries, even so far away as New Zealand. Now,
New Zealand,
they are now teaching ancient Greek and Latin in an active way, as the normal way of doing that.
Communicatively.
But also at university we do, and you know well, Eugenia, that at my university in Madrid, as we have exactly the same problem, that many students come without knowing ancient Greek, and Latin sometimes, but mostly ancient Greek, because in Spain Latin is more learned and talked. We should decide how to introduce those students in ancient Greek and to make them to go faster than their companions that already knew something. So we have decided to introduce also at university this active method, which also has forced us to learn to speak when we couldn't do that, and to learn to teach active methods.
And it has forced you,
me,
of
yes,
all
course.
people. Tell us your experience a little bit
Well,
about the active teaching
it
and
was
learning.
only some 3 or 4 years ago, when, as we decided that, of course, I could read Greek, ancient Greek, of course, after a whole life of doing that and so, but I couldn't speak it really, or I could do it very slowly and with many difficulties. So I received a course, simply a course, a training course to be able to speak and to teach actively the language. And I was not at all afraid of or ashamed of doing that, because...
Και νυν λαλείτε ελληνιστή, δίναστε λαλήν ελληνιστή, ή πετε ημίν, ο λίγοντι.
Even when I use the Erasmian pronunciation, excuse me,
because
it's our
name. Πράγμα.
Εγώ μπούλωμαι δεούρο δεικνύναι ότι ενεργετικός την χελενική γλώσσα διδάσκει στην πολύ βελτίον χίνα χωρί μάθετάει. Μάλλον ταχαίως, ο ταχύτερον, την γλώσσα μαθάνει.
Έβγε. Δι μας πάντες ενεργητικός μαθήν τα ελληνικά. Κύριε καθηγητά, πάμε να... I'm sorry. Professor Tsagalis, please tell us. Now, we are here at Forum Classics in Praxis. How do you see this active method, or do you see this active method being inseminated in schools or even universities? How do you see reality in the educational field here in Greece, from your experience?
Well, since one of the things that have been constantly emphasized in this 10th Delphi Economic Forum is data, I would say that first we need data, a lot of data. So we need to do pilot programs and have tangible results, be able to present the tangible results through these pilot programs, and then we ourselves can have a more clear picture of how this can be done, because the pilot programs will give us data, one, and two, will let us know about the problems we have, the mistakes we make, and how we can remedy them. So I think that is a first important step. I would like to add to what has been said before concerning, active or dynamic learning of ancient languages, that digital tools can help us a lot. For example, apart from dialogue scenes that can be reenacted, role-playing and all that, I'm very much in favor of digital storytelling. And by digital storytelling, I'm not referring to the substitution of the printed page by the digital page, or the screen, but I'm talking about the presentation of the content of a play or of historical work through a digital presentation with digital actors speaking, giving a summary in ancient Greek of the story. So, and I've seen actually efforts like this one with, summary performances of tragic or comic plays in YouTube.
In Greece?
No, I think it was a Belgian production,
Okay,
Belgian production of one comedy. Digital storytelling.
Was it Frogs?
I think it was Frogs, yes.
Okay, we have to speak about Frogs. I'm sorry to interrupt you. This was not preset, but in Belgium, from the University of Leuven, KU, the Catholic University of Leuven, a group of students of ancient Greek created a whole film in ancient Greek. A whole film, 1.5 hours. It was a comic play by Aristophanes, but it also had other influences from other stories. And they went and shot the whole play in Belgium, and then they came. These people called Elliniki, Agogi, and they asked for help. So I said, we're going to help you finish the film if you allow us to to have actors speak the words in the Greek pronunciation, because it was all in the Erasmian pronunciation. So they gave us permission to do that. And now, please check on YouTube. There are 2 versions of Frogs. It's a Belgian production supported totally by Elliniki Agogi, and the result is amazing. You have to see those young people of 22, 24, 25 years old speak in ancient Greek, act and play, and it's so much fun. I'm glad you mentioned it, Professor. It's so much fun. So go on YouTube and find Frogs and find the Elliniki Agogi version, please. So I'm referring to the Greek audience. So to end, I wanted to speak a little bit about the challenges that professors might face in teaching ancient Greek. Could you briefly tell us a little bit from your experience, what would be the challenges and the reactions of the professors that will be asked to change the teaching method that they have learned for so many years?
Yes, of course. I think the difficult thing is not just to convince some people or to get some people convinced that this is a better method, but also to make this institutional and to make that possible in a normal system, educational system. And the 2 main challenges are first, this frame, the official frame, because the official frame does not change by itself. It must be also shown that there is something that can be done better. And the second thing, of course, is the reaction and the connection of the teachers, because when someone has been teaching in a particular way for many years, it's very difficult just to convince him or her of changing his or her view or way of doing things. So without the teachers, it's impossible to introduce.
But you go all over the world trying to
everything.
convince them, so I think that it will be very, very successful. To finish our talk, Professor Tsagalis, tell us your dream about the Greek language.
My dream about the teaching of ancient Greek and Latin is first and foremost the classical lycia, to follow the example of Italy. I think Italy has become a superpower in the field of classical studies.
So do it like the Italians.
Well, do it like the Italians because, this is really a game changer. You get students acquire an enormous amount of knowledge at a very early age. This is a dream, of course, of a classical scholar in the sense that we would get much better students at university. But other than that, because this is the dream of a classical scholar, I think for the general public, we have to remember that we are moving towards a world where non-conventional forms of education will prevail. And we have to be more open to many new things, and I think that the active method of teaching ancient Greek and Latin, which is what we do with all modern languages, after all, should be tried. We've tried the other way. It doesn't work anymore. So let's try something new.
To experiment. Thank you. And Professor De La Villa, what is your dream regarding ancient Greek and Latin in the world?
Well, of course, that it's taught and it's learned all over the world, as it's in many countries, but even more countries and even more places, and that it is taught in such a way that young students, also elder students, but mostly young students, are attracted to study it. And for that, we have to renovate our methods. This is not a choice, I think. This is a need.
Yes, thank you very much for that. Σας ευχαριστούμε πάρα πολύ. Είδατε το πώς μπορεί στην πράξη να αλλάξει η διδασκαλία των αρχαίων ελληνικών. Δεν παραπονιούνται τα παιδιά αδίκως ότι δεν καταλαβαίνουν και ότι δεν τους αρέσουν τα αρχαία ελληνικά. Πρέπει να αλλάξει ο τρόπος της διδασκαλίας και υπάρχει η μέθοδος. Όλοι αυτοί οι άνθρωποι που έρχονται εδώ ξέρουν πώς μπορεί να διδαχτούν τα αρχαία ελληνικά διαφορετικά και εγώ εύχομαι να υλοποιηθεί πάρα πολύ γρήγορα. Σας ευχαριστώ που ήσασταν μαζί μας. Μείνετε κοντά μας για την τέταρτη και τελευταία ενότητα του φετινού Delphi Classics, Classics in Praxis, όπου θα εξετάσουμε το πόσο σχετικές είναι οι κλασικές σπουδές στο σημερινό αβέβαιο τοπίο. Ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ.